Well, hey, everybody. As Tara said, my name is Tom Wilson. I do work for Netstock. And just to kind of clarify, as you see in the upper left corner, Netstock is the publisher of Sage Inventory Advisor. So we develop the product, we support and install the product, but Sage has exclusive rights to resell Netstock as a Sage branded product. So it's Sage Inventory Advisor. So it's one of the highest partnerships that Netstock has. And in doing so, you get the benefit of the support of Sage, you get the billing engine of Sage, as well as it is powered by Netstock, so you get the best of both worlds. They've negotiated a very good price. So that's where Netstock comes in and what Sage Inventory Advisor is. But again, my name is Tom Wilson. I have a very short PowerPoint introduction, and then we'll spend most of the time in the software doing a navigational tour. But just to give you a little input on today, we're going to start with a short discussion of what Sage Inventory Advisor is and some of the inventory challenges that it addresses, the benefits of using a inventory optimization and planning engine, and then, as I said, we'll spend most of our time in the product demonstration. So, as most of you are aware, there's certainly a lot of challenges, especially in today's world, with some of the challenges of supply chain disruptions in planning inventory. And a couple of the big problems that all of our customers have notified to us is that one of the biggest challenges, how do you handle and plan for stockouts? And stockouts is one of the biggest problems that our customers face. If you run out or stock out of an item and a customer goes to get that item and you don't have it, it's very likely that they're going to find it from someone else. And the big risk is if they find it from someone else, that could have impacts on customer service down the road. So one of the challenges is certainly stocking out of items. And what we found is that is only exacerbated in today's world with the challenges with the supply chain. And as we have more and more disruptions to the supply chain with longer and longer lead times, what that becomes is even more critical to planning. And what it really says is you really want to focus on that, what we call safety stock, which is that minimum buffer, that buffer of stock that you want to have to protect you from stocking out to address the risks that things could happen. Customers don't always order the same things. They don't always, suppliers don't always deliver on time. So you want that buffer to protect you from those kinds of disruptions. And so we'll show you that and showcase that in the software. But stocking out of items is a critical challenge in planning inventory today. Another is if you overstock, you often end up with excess inventory and all of the challenges that come with that. You certainly have money tied up in capital, and it can be it could show up in things like the amount of inventory that you have in the warehouse, the amount of time it takes to manage that, all of the issues with security and insurance and all of the things that are associated with excess inventory. So you certainly want to eliminate excess inventory as much as possible. What we're seeing is with a lot of the stockouts, we are seeing some of that excess inventory start to burn up, but certainly not all of it. So excess inventory is still a problem. And then often, how do you determine what is the right amount of inventory? What's the right amount? Enough so that you don't stock out, not enough so that you see a lot of excess built up. And that can be a daunting task. And what we see is most of our customers are trying to do that with manual tools, reports, and spreadsheets. And not only is it a daunting task, but it's time consuming and it's very difficult to get the right answers. So what we're seeing is a lot of our customers are spending way too much time trying to figure out what the right inventory levels are. And one of the fundamental tenets of inventory is determining what your inventory should be. Well, it's pretty hard to do that unless you know the demand for an item moving forward. So loading sales history from an ERP engine, pulling that into some kind of a forecast engine, determining which forecast methodology is the right fit to predict future demand. There are dozens of forecasting methods. There's seasonal models, there are trends, patterns, linear trends, simple moving averages, and which forecasting method is even the right method to pick given the pattern of sales history that any given item might bring in. And the same item may behave differently at one location to another if you store it at multiple locations geographically. So forecasting can be a daunting challenge, and getting that right is critical to setting the right inventory policies to address the 3 items above that. And so we're going to address all of those, but that is everything you see on this screen is exactly what NetStock and Sage Inventory Advisor was designed to do. So what is Sage Inventory Advisor? Well, first of all, it is a software application. Now, it is an inventory and planning software application, but the key is it will get all of its data as input from your Sage ERP platform. So we support Sage 100, Sage 300, 500, and Sage X3. And we have connectors to all of those platforms where we automatically know what data we need, what fields to pull it from. But we will pull automatically the data we need from your Sage ERP. And by doing that, we will pull it into a planning engine. We will be able to show you what your current inventory is, recommend what it should be, given demand for the items, given lead time from the supplier, given supplier performance and risk, giving all of the supply chain disruptions that we just talked about. And in doing so, we will be able to recommend what your inventory should be. And in doing that, we can show you any item that you have too much is in excess and the impact that's having on your working capital. We can identify any items you don't have enough of, any items you're out of or about to run out of, and the impact that could have on customer service or sales. And if you are spending a lot of time with manual tools, reports, processes, this will save you a lot of time. Now, let me emphasize, this will never replace the knowledge or expertise that you have in your business, but it will replace all of that effort and time it takes to maintain reports, spreadsheets with something much more robust and automated. So you can spend your valuable time not downloading data, maintaining spreadsheets, finding problems, but being presented with the things that need your attention, prioritized to the ones that have the biggest impact on your business, and recommending inventory stocking and replenishment levels. And again, you can spend your valuable time focused on that instead of finding it in the first place. So the way it works is Sage will set up your instance of Inventory Advisor on a Sage server. Then we'll set up a connector through the internet to your Sage ERP. So this is what we call a connected service. And part of the implementation is we will set up a job that will automatically run. Typically, that's once a day. Typically, once a day, you will connect your instance of Inventory Advisor to your Sage ERP server for the purpose of uploading that transactional data we need as input. So even if you're planning in a manual report or spreadsheet, there's certain information that you need as a starting point for planning. You need to know what your stocking locations are. You need to know what your current stocking levels are, what items are in those locations, who are your suppliers, your costs, your lead times. If you're doing any assembly, kitting, you need to know your bill of materials. And Inventory Advisor is no different. It needs the same information as input, but the difference is it knows exactly where to get it from Sage. And we'll set up a job, again, typically once a day, where your instance of Inventory Advisor will connect to your Sage ERP and upload the data it needs. It takes about 10 minutes, and then we'll disconnect from your Sage ERP system. Then all of that data will go into your instance of Inventory Advisor, where it'll go through a series of analytics and calculations, all done on the Inventory Advisor server. So this literally has minimal impact on your Sage ERP server. And then anyone that you want to log into Inventory Advisor can. The subscription is for unlimited users. These users are not affiliated with your Sage ERP users, and it does not impact the business care you're paying on Sage ERP. These are users, people, if you will, that you want to log into Inventory Advisor, and you can have as many as you want. And you log in as a browser user, and it can be any browser, Internet Explorer, Safari, Chrome, any device that supports a browser. But you'll be presented with a series of planning recommendations. And it starts with a dashboard. And so what Inventory Advisor is designed to do is to answer those 2 questions in those 2 green boxes. Starting on the green box on the left, it's going to bring to your attention on the dashboard any items at any location that have issues or problems that need your attention. So, hey, heads up, you have way too much of this item, and here's what it's costing you in excess inventory. Or opposite, hey, here's some items that you don't have enough of, you're out of, or you're about to run out of. Here's the impact it could have on customer service or sales. And so it's going to bring to your attention problems, giving you the information you need to address those problems. And then on the right, it's going to recommend what in advance you need to order. It'll be recommended work orders for anything you make, assemble, or kit, it'll be recommended purchase orders for anything that you buy. But it'll be recommended orders, taking into consideration the lead time, the supplier performance. So those will be optimal order recommendations. And as you place those optimal orders in the box on the right, you'll start to see less and less problems on the left. But to do that, we do need information above and beyond anything in your Sage ERP. And it starts on the bottom right with a very robust forecast. Again, it's pretty hard to determine what your inventory should be unless you know the demand moving forward. So we'll showcase the forecast in the demo. We'll spend some time there. But on the left, this is a page out of an industry best practice for managing inventory. And what that is not all items contribute the same to your business. Some items contribute greater in value. Other items contribute greater in inventory turns or volume. So by loading data from Sage, along with some rules that you set up in Inventory Advisor will then rank every item based on its value to your business as either an A, B, or a C item. And it will rank the same item based on its inventory turns as high, medium, or low. So every item is going to get two classifications, an A, B, C for its value to your business, and a high, medium, or low for its inventory turns or volume. So those items in the example here, and I'll show this in the software, in the upper right, the green boxes, those are the items that contribute the most, turn the fastest. And the best practice is you want to pay more attention to those items. You want to spend more of your valuable time on those items that contribute more to your business. And you probably want to set more aggressive replenishment policies. You don't want to run out of an A item that's high turning, and you want to be alerted if something's happening to it. But it starts by identifying the item. And what most customers have told us when they turn this on is of their existing inventory, typically 2 to 10% of that inventory is in some kind of a stocked out status. Either you're out of an item or about to run out of an item that could be impacted by customer service or sales. 10 to 15% of existing inventory is in some kind of a surplus status where you have excess inventory, more than you need, and money tied up in working capital. And roughly half of a planner's time is not necessarily spent making planning decisions, but spent pulling together all the data you need, downloading data, uploading reports, maintaining spreadsheets, so that you can make planning decisions. So again, Inventory Advisor will never replace your knowledge or expertise, but it will replace all of those manual efforts to get data, maintain reports and spreadsheets, and instead you can spend your valuable time dealing with issues, being presented with issues, and having the information you need to resolve them. And if you can address any or all three of these areas, the return on investment can just be off the charts. So that is a quick introduction to Inventory Advisor. Again, it is a planning tool. It runs on its own server. You access it via a browser, but it automatically gets its data from input from ERP. It will then process that data. You can log in to Inventory Advisor as a browser user, where you'll be presented a series of planning recommendations. So with that, I am going to stop, and I am going to pull up a live instance of Sage Inventory Advisor. And if you notice where it says last import March 30th. So this is a live instance. It has demonstration data. It did connect to a Sage ERP system and uploaded data and disconnected. So I am not connected to Sage ERP right now, but I am on a live instance of Sage Inventory Advisor. It's just we don't refresh this data on a daily basis. In a production environment, you would see that that red box would probably have yesterday's date on it. But I am on a live instance. Now, I happen to be logged in using Chrome, but I've shown this exact same screen on my iPhone, iPad, just depends on what device and browser is most convenient for you. I'm using Chrome right now. I've used Internet Explorer. I've used Edge. I've used Safari. Again, just depends on what device and browser is convenient. But when you first log in, you do see what is called a dashboard. Now, a dashboard is a high-level summary, a summary of all the inventory at any given stocking location. Now, you can have one or many stocking locations. In my demo database, I actually have 4 stocking locations. My Los Angeles is a standalone location. It stores inventory and replenishes from suppliers. My central warehouse, which is in Chicago, does the same thing. It stores inventory, it replenishes from suppliers, but in addition, it supports 2 remote locations. So my Detroit location and my New York location, they store inventory, but they do not replenish from a supplier. They replenish from the central warehouse. So all of the demand for all of the items in New York and Detroit need to be consolidated and uploaded to the central warehouse, which will then consolidate all of that demand and place an optimal order on the supplier, and then issue transfers to those remote locations. So you can have standalone stocking locations, you can have locations with dependencies on each other. But for illustration purposes, I'm going to pick on Los Angeles. And if you notice, I also have a location button. And that's where we can look at those classifications, because an item may behave differently at one location than another. Think about like a snow shovel. A snow shovel is probably going to have a different value to your business, a different volume in the northeast of the United States than it does in the southwest. So an item can behave differently. And I'm going to pick on a location. I'm going to look at Los Angeles. And here is the item classification for the items in Los Angeles. And the first, this is that A, B, and C for value. The second tab is the high, medium, and low for volume. And then together that equals the following matrix. So the rows across on the top are your A rows. So all of your A items are in the top row. Your B items are in the middle row. Your C items are in the bottom row. But in columns, we have that volume. So the high volume is on the right, medium's in the middle, low's on the left. So every item is going to fall into one of those 9 boxes, which is the intersection of an ABC row and a high, medium, or low column. So the boxes in the upper right, the green ones, those are your bread and butter items. Those are the items that contribute the most and turn the fastest. So a couple of things. How did Inventory Advisor put those items in those different classifications? Well, part of the implementation is you can set up some rules. And if I go to my parameters and we look at the ABC for value, you can base the decisions on either forecast or history. We can weight it by cost, selling price, or margin. The default is cost. And A is considered those items that generate 80% of the value to your business. B's are the next 16%, and C's would be the bottom 4. So based on those rules, if I go back to that grid where I'm weighted it by cost, if I hover, it turns out that 76% of the value to my business is being generated by 8% of my items. So those items are the ones I probably want to pay more of my time to, I probably want to pay more attention to, and I might want to set more aggressive policies. So what we can do is, here's that industry best practice. You can set what's called a replenishment cycle, which is when you do place an order with the supplier, for what coverage period are you placing that order? And the best practice is you might want to place smaller, more frequent orders for those items that turn faster. You might want to set a more aggressive target. I don't ever want to run out of an A item that's high turning. So you can give a little more respect to those items that contribute more, and you certainly want to pay more attention to those items. So fundamental throughout the software is we're going to rank the items based on their contribution to the business, and we'll see that throughout the software. But again, then you can pay a little more respect in terms of the replenishment policies for those items. So let's go back to the dashboard. And again, I just wanted to show you that classification because you're going to see that throughout. But when you first log on to Inventory Advisor, you do see what is called a dashboard. And a dashboard is a high-level summary, a summary of all the inventory at this stocking location. Now you can have one or many, and as I've shown you in my demo base, we have 4, but we're looking at the dashboard for Los Angeles. And the idea of the dashboard is to answer that first question from my PowerPoint, that first green box: are there any items at this location that has issues or problems and needs my attention? And it's laid out in several panels. Now, the first panel is called stock holding, and it shows that right now in Los Angeles, you are carrying $10.3 million in inventory at your cost. Now, Inventory Advisor is highly scalable. We have customers with less than $100,000 of inventory planning with the tool. We've got customers with over 50 million. My demo database happens to have about 10 million, just to give you a feel for the scale. But right now, according to Sage ERP, you're carrying 10.3 million of inventory, but the planning tool is recommending you should be carrying 4.7. That would be the optimal inventory. given demand for the items, given lead time from the suppliers, given supplier performance. That would be the optimal inventory to fulfill your demand. Now, I can see how my inventory has been trending over time. Each of these bars represents a period of time. There are 6, and they can be displayed in days, weeks, or months. So I can see how my inventory in Los Angeles has been trending over the last 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months. I'm just going to leave it at months. And here's how your inventory in Los Angeles has been trending over the last 6 months. 6 months ago in yellow, the top or darker yellow, if I hover, you were carrying $10.8 million of inventory against a recommendation of the smaller, lighter yellow, 5.5. So I can see how my actual to recommended inventory has been trending, in this case over the months, with red simply being the last time data was loaded from Sage, which typically was yesterday, at which time you were carrying 10.3 against a recommendation of 4.7. So with just a quick glance, I can see that I'm carrying quite a bit more inventory in Los Angeles than the planning tool is recommended. In fact, if I slide over to the next panel, you have some excess stock in Los Angeles. And excess stock is defined as inventory above the maximum recommended stocking levels. And right now there are 2,307 items in Los Angeles that are in excess. And just the value of that excess inventory is costing your business $3.6 million. And if I hover where it says full report, if I click there, I will get an online report showing me all 2,307 items that are in Los Angeles that are currently in excess. Now, the default of this report is it's sorted based on the value of the excess inventory in descending order, but I can change that. I can change the sort. I can change it to any other column. I can always scroll down. I can see this entire report. This one's kind of large. I could always export it to a spreadsheet for further review. But what we're finding is more and more customers are using less reliance on spreadsheets and doing more analysis right here online. And so I can see the SKU. And where the SKU is green, if I click on it, I'll drill into more detail. We'll do that in a minute. But I can see the item description that was imported from Sage. This particular item happens to be a C item out of the ABC and low turning out of the high, medium, or low. So the item that's costing me the most in excess inventory is one of the least important items to my business. So I might really want to pay some attention to this and maybe put some proactive efforts in to burn it down. Now, this is a purchased item, and here's my primary supplier. Now, according to your Sage ERP, you have on hand, as we speak, 300 units in Los Angeles. At your cost of $329, you are therefore carrying $99,000 worth of this item, but Inventory Advisor has identified you have 299 more units than you need, which is costing you $98,000 in excess inventory. And again, give me a minute and I'll show you how it does all of that analysis. But maybe I don't want to look at a list of 2,300 items. That's a lot to deal with right now. Maybe I want to pare this down. So let's take this report and let's go over to my filter button and let's filter or sort. I can sort based on values. Maybe I want to look at the age of the item. Maybe I want to look at excess inventory, but only of a certain product or only from a certain supplier. Maybe I have a meeting later today and I want to get a list of all the excess inventory from that supplier so we can have a discussion. You can also load any field from Sage. We call it a grouping. So this can be any field that you want to filter on. So this panel can have as many fields in it as you want. Here are just a few examples. Maybe I want to look at a finished good product line. Maybe I want to look at a product type and I only want to look at my raw materials if I do any assembly or manufacturing. Or maybe I want to look at the excess inventory that a certain buyer is responsible for. So I can put any field I want in as a filter, but you can also filter on those classifications. Hey, I'm looking at a list of excess inventory. If I have some A items that are high turning in excess, I may not be as concerned, they're going to move. But what I'd really like to know is which of my C items that are low turning, which of those are in excess? Let's apply the filter. And it turns out that 602 items in Los Angeles are in excess and are my C and low turning items. So that might be a list I really want to pay some attention to and attack. So I can slice, filter, sort, but out of all those items, back on the dashboard, we're simply trying to bring your attention to the 5 items that are costing you the most in excess inventory. These 5 items alone are costing you $260,000 in excess inventory. Almost 10% of your excess problem is not 2,000 items, it's these 5. So if you do nothing else on a daily or weekly basis, you might want to really keep your eye on these top 5 lists presented to you on the dashboard, because addressing those problems will have the biggest impact to your business. And as you burn that excess inventory down, you'll see a new list of 5, and you can start to work that excess inventory out of your business. But that's where you have too much inventory right now. If I slide over to the next panel, I want to give you a little more proactive heads up. Hey, heads up, here are some orders in Sage. It could be work orders for manufactured items, purchase orders for supplied items, but here are some orders that when they arrive are going to add and exacerbate your excess problem. In fact, there are 503 items on order, and when those orders arrive, they're going to generate another 2.5 million in excess inventory. We call those surplus orders because those are orders you might want to review, because they are candidates to maybe delay or even cancel those orders. So let's in fact use one of these as we're going to drill in, and in doing so, I want to show you how Inventory Advisor is doing its analysis, making its recommendations. In other words, let's show you the fundamentals. So let's look at this second item right here, ST8128. Not sure what it is, but if I hover, I can see the description. I'm going to click on it, and with one click, it's going to take me to the detail, but for this SKU, with this description that was imported from Sage, and we're looking at it as it's currently in my Los Angeles location. And if I want to toggle, I can look at this item in any other location it's stored at, and notice that this item behaves differently in Detroit than it does in New York. But right now we're looking at this item in Los Angeles. I want to see what my stocking and replenishment recommendations are for this SKU in Los Angeles. Well, to start, the first thing we're going to look at is what your current inventory is. And according to Sage ERP, right now in Los Angeles, you have 479 units in stock. You have 23 open sales orders. Now, this is a purchased item that you might buy and resell. You have 23 open sales orders that have not yet been fulfilled. And if I'd like more information, if I scroll down, I have a tab called Sales Orders, and here are the 23 sales orders that we've imported from Sage ERP. So I have some visibility and detail right here. And we're going to pull that out of available inventory because those orders have not been fulfilled, which means your available stock is 456. Now, as we speak, you have 555 open POs, so on order with the Full Champ Technology Company. And if I'd like more information on any open purchase order, I click my purchase order tab, and here is the detail on the open POs that was imported from Sage. So again, in one place, I can see that detail. And that's going to bring your inventory to 1,011. So that's what your current inventory is. But the power of the planning tool is to recommend what your inventory should be. And that all happens over here on the right. Well, again, it's pretty hard to determine what your inventory should be unless you know the demand of that item moving forward. So Inventory Advisor will automatically load the sales history of this item at this location. And according to your Sage ERP, there were 31 months of sales history in Sage. And that's represented graphically in blue. And Inventory Advisor is going to analyze that pattern in blue, and it's going to test it to determine which forecasting method is the best fit to predict future demand. So there are over a dozen forecasting methods. And one of the biggest challenges when you're trying to generate your own forecast is which method should you even use? Are there patterns? Are there trends? Are there outliers? And what we find is often that we just simply select a simple moving average. Well, that may not be the best forecast. So let me show you. In fact, I'm going to show you this button down on the right. If I ever need help, I'm on an online application. I simply hit my help button, and it's going to take me to the support. Now, it's actually supported by NetStock, but it shows me when I can actually talk to someone. but I can also search for knowledge, information, articles. And if I click, one of the articles I want to look at is forecasting. Here are several. And one of them is, hey, just tell me how the Inventory Advisor application generates a forecast. And what I want to show you is just a simple little summary. But what we're going to look at is that sales history. And we're going to look at that sales history because we're going to determine which forecasting method, or what we call a demand type, is the best one to use to predict future demand. And if that sales history is minimal or has no sales history, maybe it's a brand new item, we're going to acknowledge it. If it has limited sales history, we're going to assign it what's called a young model, which is more of a simple moving average. We're going to test to see if it is a slow moving item because we have a forecast methodology for that. Is the sales history pattern sporadic? We have a sales forecasting model. Is there a pattern? Does that pattern repeat itself? Is it repeat itself in a seasonal model? We have a seasonal forecasting model. We're going to look to see if there are any trends. Is that trend linear? Does it trend in a certain direction? And if we can't find any trends, we have a model for that. So bottom line is we're going to use what's called a best fit method. We're going to analyze the sales history, pick from over a dozen methods the one that's the best fit, and use it to create a computer-generated forecast for the next 12 months. Now, if you need an extension, we can extend that to 24 months. But we will automatically load the data, select the best forecasting method, use it to create a computer-generated forecast. So everything in this panel happened automatically. But if you want to change that forecast, you can. In any event, we are going to track how is that forecast doing against actual sales, because we're going to alert you to any item that is over or under forecasted. So if I scroll down, I have what's called a forecast history tab. And at that, I can see here is the forecast generated by Inventory Advisor. Let's map that against your actual sales. And in doing so, we will be able to see how is the forecast doing against actual sales, and we can alert you to any errors. So a very robust forecast. Now, the next side of the equation is the supply side. And how is this supplier doing? Are they delivering on time? Do they deliver the right quantity? Are your lead times disrupted? Because if they are, we're going to recommend a safety stock, and that's that buffer. That's a buffer that protects you from stocking out. You want it big enough to deal with those supply chain risks. You don't want it so big, though, that you start to see a lot of excess buildup. Well, you can go into your Sage and you can set a minimum stocking level. But how did you do it? How often do you calculate it? Most of our customers tell us it's kind of a best guess. And if you don't get it right, you're probably going to see a lot of stockouts or a lot of excess. Well, Inventory Advisor uses several very dynamic inputs to recommend that minimum. One of those is, remember when we were looking at the classification and we had that policy? Well, we assigned a more aggressive target to any item that falls into the category A and H. So again, we're giving this item more respect because it's a high value, high turning item. We're going to look at the lead time. How long does it take to get this item from this supplier? And according to Sage ERP, it's 90 days. So when you place, in this case, a purchase order for this SKU from this supplier, it should arrive in 90 days. But does it? Does this supplier deliver on time? Are they delivering the right quantity? Is there a risk that they're not going to make lead time? If so, you should increase your safety stock. So let's go get some more data from Sage ERP. Let's pull it into our Supplier Performance tab. Does this supplier deliver on time? Do they deliver the right quantity? I can see that graphically. Or here are the actual transactions from Sage. Here is every purchase order you've placed on this SKU from this supplier. This is your purchase order history file. We've pulled it into Inventory Advisor. So for instance, here was an order that was placed on July 7th with an expected arrival date of August 22nd. It actually arrived on the 23rd. We ordered 225 units, and that's exactly what we received. So it turns out that this supplier is doing pretty good. They're just about spot on the stated lead time. In fact, they're doing a little bit better. But what we're finding more and more is that's not the case. With the supply chain challenges, we're finding that people are not delivering on time. And so we're going to assess the supplier performance, assess the risk, And we can then dynamically increase or decrease the safety stock accordingly. And based on all of that, we are recommending that for this SKU, you keep 24 days of safety stock. Well, what does that mean? I want to know how much of this item to stock and when to replenish. And that all comes together in my policy panel. And we're going to look at it in both days of coverage and transpose it into units. So let's start with days. Well, we know our lead time is 90 days because we got that from Sage. But how many units do you need to cover 90 days of lead time? Well, it depends on my forecast over here in yellow. So based on that forecast, you need 204 units to cover 90 days of lead time. You need 57 units to cover 24 days of safety stock. So now in units, driven off of a forecast and a supplier performance assessment, here is your recommended minimum stocking level, your reorder point, and your maximum stocking level. An inventory advisor will calculate a min, a reorder point, and a max for every item at every location every day, whether it's a finished good or a raw material that you buy, whether it's a finished good you make. Inventory advisor will calculate a min, a reorder point, and a max, and then compare it to what your current inventory is. Well, remember, you had 456 units available. Well, that puts you in an excess position. The most you need is 324. So right now you're in an excess position, which is a problem. But you have a bigger problem. Not only are you in an excess position, but you have more on order. And so the first red flag heads up that Inventory Advisor is bringing to your attention is you have an order that's going to exacerbate your excess problem. So the first thing that we're bringing to your attention is you've got some orders you might want to review. Here's some detail on those orders if you need it, but here's some orders you might want to review because they're candidates to maybe delay or even cancel. And that is why this item is being brought to your attention on the dashboard underneath surplus orders. So the fundamentals though are, again, generate a forecast, calculate a safety stock, then determine a min, reorder point max compared to your stock on hand. And the first two panels then are summarizing and bringing your attention where you have too much inventory and the impact it's having on your business. Now, right below that is the opposite. Are there any items you don't have enough of? And right now, there's some items that you're completely out of. There's none in stock. In fact, there are 967 items with zero inventory, according to Sage, but there's demand on those items. And you can't fulfill that demand until you replenish. And until I replenish, then I'm at risk of not being able to meet that demand, which could cost me $669,000 in lost sales. Doesn't mean I'm going to lose a sale, but I am certainly at risk. Again, I can look at all 967, but again, here are the top 5. These 5 items alone are putting me at risk of $172,000 in lost sales. A third of that problem is not 967 items, it's these 5. So again, here would be some items we highly recommend you pay some attention to. In fact, let's look at one of those. If I click on the item, it's going to take me to the detail. And same fundamentals, we're going to generate a forecast. In this case, we selected a seasonal model. We're going to generate the safety stock, calculate a min, a reorder point max, compare it to your stock on hand. Now, good news is you have some POs coming in, which is great since you're stocked out, and that's going to bring you to 947. But 947 puts you below the recommended reorder point. So we're going to trigger a recommendation to place an additional order, and that order is enough to get you back to your max, which is you should place an order for 458 units today. So again, we're going to look at what your inventory is. You are below the reorder point, recommend you place an additional order. So good news, you can't get the current order in fast enough because you're stocked out. But even with what's already on order, you should place an additional order so you don't continue to run out down the road. And that's why this item is brought to your attention under the dashboard, under stockouts, and I can drill down, get some information. But the next panel is heads up. Here's some items you're about to stock out of. Now, these are items that you have some inventory today, but hey, heads up, you're probably going to run out before you can replenish. So you might want to take some proactive action. Maybe you want to move some items from one location to another. Maybe you need to expedite an order. Maybe if that order is important enough to your business, you might even want to pay for some air shipping or air freight. So heads up, you're about to stock out, but by clicking on the items, you'll be able to get the information you need to make some decisions. So the dashboard is really designed to answer that first question on my PowerPoint. Are there any items at this location that have issues or problems and need your attention? Now, the second green box on my PowerPoint was, hey, Tom, just tell me what I need to order today. So remember this item that we're recommending you order? Does that mean I've got to go hunting around to look for every item that has gone below its reorder point? Absolutely not. That's what my orders button does. And if I click my orders button, what that says is, hey, show me every item that has gone below its reorder point, in this case for Los Angeles, but I can toggle to another location, across all my suppliers. So show me every item that's gone below its reorder point in Los Angeles across all my suppliers, and here's the list. So for instance, the Consolidated Tire Company. Inventory Advisor is recommending that you place 8 items on order with that supplier. You may order 20 things from that supplier, but today 8 items have gone below its reorder point. It's recommending 1,400 units. At your cost, it'll add up to $67,000. If you have cubic feet and weight, it will add that up, which might be helpful if you're trying to fill up a truck or a container. But as a purchasing manager, now for suppliers you buy from, you have the actual supplier. If you make or assemble an item, you'd probably want to set up a supplier called factory or production line, something like that. And those would be the recommended work orders against that supplier. But for an actual supplier, it's the supplier. So let's go look at the recommended order for Consolidated. I might want to make some adjustments to that order, but let's go look at the recommended order. I haven't created it yet, but what we're looking at is a little more detail on the recommended order from Consolidated Tire for my Los Angeles location. Here's that same summary: units, cost, weight. But for each one of those items, I'll be able to see a summary of that item's detail. I can see the forecast. I can see in days and units my lead time, my safety stock, what's already on hand, what's already on order. Now, this item is a B item that's medium turning. Inventory Advisor is recommending you place 500 on order. Well, actually, that's not true. We're recommending that you order 113. That would be the optimal order to keep your inventory at the optimal level. But you have a minimum order quantity rule set up in Sage, and we will honor it. And at $5.37, this line item will add up to $2,687. And with a lead time of 90 days, you can expect this to arrive in June. Now, if that is not enough information to validate the recommendation to place 500 units on order, you can always drill into the detail from here. In fact, I can even do it in a new window. And so I just went from the order recommendation to the detail, but for this item, and I can see the forecast. I can change the forecast. I can look at the safety stock, my resulting min, reorder point max, my stock on hand. I can see, is this part of a bill of material? I can see the bill of material structure. Are there any open sales orders? What is my supplier performance and actual lead time? Do I have any open work orders or purchase orders? I can look at all that information, and you know what? I completely disagree with 500. I just got off the phone with Consolidated. They're not going to be producing this item for a couple of months. So I'm going to go back to my order schedule, and based on my knowledge, my expertise, my understanding of this supplier, I'm going to bump this line item up by 50 units, and I'm going to tab out. And what I did is I just added 50 units, $269, and this is what the order would look like if I placed it now. And I can continue to review each of the items that Inventory Advisor is recommending, drilling into detail if I need it, making adjustments if I want to. But when I'm ready to place, in this case, a purchase order, I still have to execute a purchase order in Sage. But I don't have to go type this in. I don't have to rekey it. All I have to do is hit the download button. And this will be immediately extracted as a file and imported automatically into the purchase order module of Sage. Now, you'll need to release that as an order. Any rules, procedures, workflows, approval processes that you have set up in the Sage PO module will still apply, but you're making your decisions on what to stock, when to buy, driven off the analytics of Inventory Advisor, but together with your knowledge and expertise for any fine tuning based on your real life understanding of the market, the supplier. But when you're ready, you send those as a file automatically into Sage, and a purchase order will be executed. And what you'll start to see as you use a tool like this is you'll start to see your inventory trend towards the model. As you manage your excess stock and catch it before it happens, you'll start to see excess reduce. As you catch stockouts before they happen and place optimal orders, you'll start to see stockouts reduce. And if you can reduce those stockouts, improve customer service and improve sales, if you can eliminate that excess inventory and free up that working capital, and if you can give planners, purchasing managers, production managers better, more timely information so that they can spend their valuable time not downloading data, maintaining spreadsheets, but being presented with information, presented with items that need your attention, prioritized to the ones that have the biggest impact on your business, with information at your fingertips to resolve those problems. Again, planner productivity, eliminating stockouts, eliminating excess inventory. If you can address any or all three of those, the return on investment can just be off the charts. So again, that's a lot to look at. I covered quite a bit in a short time. And so what I would suggest, we're just about out of time and I want to leave a few minutes for some questions. So what I would suggest, if you're interested in maybe a deeper dive, maybe a more custom conversation based on some of your unique inventory challenges and requirements, we would be delighted to set that up. My suggestion would be just to reach out to the team at Stewart, let them know that you'd be interested in a further discussion, maybe a deeper dive, and they can coordinate with us, and we'll be glad to set that up. So I'll be delighted to have a follow-on conversation and go into your unique requirements. But what I would like to do, Tara, is open it up to, are there any questions within the few minutes we have left? Any questions from today?
Yeah, I'm looking. I don't see any questions from anybody. Beverly, Brooke, Michelle, Sue, do you guys have any questions?
Hey, just a couple that I do get a lot. Is one of them is, do you have to be on the most current release of Sage to use Inventory Advisor? And the answer is no. Again, we support Sage 100, Sage 300, 500, and X3. And we go back quite a ways. We support Sage 100 back to version 4.3. We support 300 back to 5.4, 500 back to 7.4, and X3 back to 5.0. So you do not have to be on the most current release. In fact, if you install Inventory Advisor and connect it to an older version of Sage, if you upgrade to a newer version, it doesn't even impact Inventory Advisor. And that's because we run this on a connected service. All we do is connect to Sage to get your data. So if you upgrade to a newer release, it doesn't impact Inventory Advisor. And then the other question we do get a lot is this a complex and time-consuming implementation? And the answer is no. Inventory Advisor is relatively quick to install. My team will set up your instance of Inventory Advisor on a Sage server. We'll set up the connector to your Sage ERP server and load your data. So you'll be able to see your data in your instance of Inventory Advisor relatively quickly. In fact, one of the things that on the dashboard is what we call data quality. And what this is this is literally an assessment of the data that you just loaded into Inventory Advisor from Sage. And the idea is to bring to your attention any issues or problems in your data. And so, for instance, if I hit this overall score, it's going to show me, hey, you just loaded some data with $2.3 thousand of items that had negative cost. There were items with a negative on-hand balance. 30 items had no lead time. And if I scroll down, there were $9.7 thousand of overdue purchase orders. And if I click, it'll show me a list of all the overdue purchase orders. So it's going to assess your data, give you a pretty thorough roadmap of things that might need review and cleanup, and then you can reload the data. There's training. It can be taken online. You're probably looking at 5 to 10 hours to get through the training. Then you're going to want to spend some time with my support team to go through questions, usage, navigation kinds of analysis with them. But you're probably looking at about 30 to 35 hours of your time over a 2 to 4 week time period, and you're up and running. And then, as I showed, there's lots of help in the software. There's a help button right here online. So really a pretty quick implementation, and you'll be able to put this into productive use pretty quickly. But again, I can't emphasize enough, if you are interested, this is purchased through Sage. You would purchase it through Stewart, and they can work with you to understand your situation, provide any pricing, and then I'll pull myself and my team in. We'll be glad to assist with any further conversations.
And it actually looks like we do have a question. Michelle, would you like to ask your question? You just have to unmute. Let me see if I can. Oh, there we go. All right, you're unmuted. Or you can also type it in the chat too. Let's see. Let me see what her question is. Oh, so Michelle's question was, we set it up ourselves, or do we set it up ourselves? Oh, hold on. Her question's getting cut off.
Yeah,
oh,
no,
is
so
the
that
frequency
implementation
something that they
process,
set up themselves?
It's a very structured implementation. There's 5 onboarding steps, and my team will work with you every step of the way. So part of the fees for Inventory Advisor, there's a one-time activation fee that covers all of the onboarding steps. Then there is a monthly subscription. But for that one-time activation fee that covers all of the onboarding steps, we'll work with you to set it up, load your data, review that data quality report so that you can do any data cleanup. We'll provide training as well as consulting services to get you up and running. So it's a very structured approach. We've got over 1,800 customers that have been onboarded through that approach. So it's pretty tried and true, but we'll work with you every step of the way.
And then the other question related to that was for the frequency of pushing data, can you do it more than once a day? Like, is that something they could set up themselves?
Yeah. So part of the implementation is to identify how frequently you want to load data. The vast majority of our customers do load it once a day and plan their inventory in a 24-hour window. We do have some customers that reload more frequently, maybe like morning, noon, and night, if there's a business reason to do that. We even have some customers that only load it once a week. So it just depends on the requirement. And if you ever did need to do just a manual refresh, you can always do that. Right here, there's a data refresh button.
Okay, let me see if there's any other questions. Doesn't look like, I think we got all of Michelle's. Yeah, I think we have answered all of the questions.
Okay, well, sure. Well, so it's a pleasure talking to you today. But if you do, if you think of anything after you get off the phone, just reach out to Stuart, and they can coordinate with the NetStock team, and we can, set up a follow-up. But thanks, Tara, for setting this up. I appreciate it, and appreciate all your time today.
That's great, guys. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. Have a great day.